The following officers are in attendance: Emma Wiggins, the Deputy Chief Executive, Robin Harris, Deputy Monitoring Officer, and we have Joe Millard and Kelly McKenzie from Democratic Services. The evacuation procedure, I think you're all pretty familiar with that. There isn't, as I'm made aware, any drills tonight, so if the fire alarm does go off, please make your way to the fire exit to my right or out to the main foyer and down the stairs. Please don't use the lifts. If there is anyone in attendance that might require assistance, could they please make themselves known? Thank you. Right, I'd now like to, agenda item 2, invite the Deputy Chief Executive to give apologies. Invite the Deputy Chief Executive.
Darby and Tatton. Are there any others?
Apologies from Councillor Thomas and Councillor Perkin.
And I also have on my sheet Councillor Roger Clark and Councillor Eddie Thomas. Councillor Bonney.
And Councillor McCall.
Thank you. Right, moving on then to agenda item 3, minutes of the meetings held on the 7th of December 2022, minutes 497 to 506. Is it your wish that I sign those as a correct record? Thank you, members. And the extraordinary council meeting held on the 4th of January 2023, minutes 554 to 558. Is it your wish that I sign those as a correct record? Thank you, members. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any members who've got any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests to declare on the agenda this evening? Thank you. Moving on then to item 5. It's been pretty quiet for the mayor's engagement since Christmas. I did attend Councillor Ben Stokes' funeral on the 3rd of January. It was nice to see quite a few members there to pay their respects. And I attended a brewery tour, Sinkport dinner last week at Shepherd Neame Brewery at the invitation of the Mayor of Faversham, which was quite good. And I'd like to thank the Deputy Mayor, Sarah Stephen, for standing in at very short notice yesterday evening, a presentation evening at the Meadowfield Sixth Form College in Ufton Lane. Unfortunately, I've been taken ill. Thank you, Sarah. Following that, sadly, members, we were informed recently of the passing of Alderman Adrian Crowther, whose funeral was held last week. We gave our condolences to Adrian's family and friends. I'd like to invite the leader to pay tribute to Alderman Crowther. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Adrian was a lovely man. I didn't really know him until he approached me in late 2012 to talk about defecting from the Conservatives to UKIP. He went on to become UKIP's first Whale Borough councillor and indeed our first at KCC. He was, of course, soon joined by many more on both councils, but his experience helped us all in those early heady days. He was already renowned for frankly awful jokes. But in the current council, I fear he has a couple of strong rivals. One of them isn't here tonight, Councillor Palmer, but Councillor Gibson, I think you're not saying anything, but because Adrian had a lot of experience, having been both a mayor of Swale and previously of Rochester, and had been a councillor at all 3 tiers for many, many years. The election results themselves are a testament to how much his local people loved him, as he always topped the polls irrespective of what party he stood for. Even when there were multi-seat wards, he would get more votes than others of the same party. His legacy lives on in Minster-on-Sea, where he was a parish councillor for many years, and it was Adrian's idea and funding but created the outdoor community gym on Belize. He also funded phase 1 of the Glen Play area, which included a bespoke piece of equipment for disabled children and the LED lighting on Scrapsgate Road. At one stage, he even relinquished his seat on the council to save the public the cost of an election. Don't actually approve of that, but it's worth mentioning the comments of the parish clerk of Minster, Trish Hamilton, when talking about Hadrian. Oh, how many politicians do you see in the discount aisle in the local supermarket late at night buying food to give to our most vulnerable residents? Well, that was Adrian. People in the Harps estate and Lapwing Close in Minster and further afield will know exactly what I mean, because he fed many a family with humility and humour. And that is just a snapshot of the good stuff that he did. Speaking more personally, Adrian was the nicest guy. He didn't take kindly to bullying and said so. He was beyond kind. According to the naysayers, he wasn't the greatest politician, and on that I agree. He changed allegiances a couple of times, and he was slated for doing so. What people don't realise is that he jumped ship because he had principles, and he wouldn't play games. With Adrian, what you saw was what you got. He had no ego. I can echo those sentiments. He was a bit scatterbrained, even worse than me with computers, and his driving was really horrendous. But he was a genuine person who it was a pleasure to share a pint with and to listen to his stories. And yes, even to those awful jokes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I'd now like to invite Councillor Ken Ingleton to pay his respects.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Much of what I'm going to say has already been said, but I'll say it again. Adrian was well liked by the community. I knew him following his move to Sheppey from the Medway Towns, where he had been a teacher and a member of Rochester Council, of which he rose to the office of Mayor and became involved in the formation of the Dickens Festival at Medway. Soon after his move to Swale, he was elected to this council in 2000 and the county council in 2005, using his grant to provide many things, but we've heard already that he provided the trim trail along the Lees at Minster. He served as mayor here in 2009 to 10. Adrian served on the planning committee and made his mark with some controversial approvals. One in point was in voting to approve development on the last obstacle to the Sittingbourne Southern Circular Road. In 2001, Adrian was one of the first members of Minster Parish Council following its reformation. He worked hard for the residents and became well known to all. In 2013, he suffered a serious stroke, which he never really recovered from. Despite this, with the help of all, he continued in office for a further 6 years before standing down from public duties. Finally, suffering from dementia, he became disorientated and often needed help to return home. We will miss Adrian, as he was an all-round good egg. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ingleton. Just briefly, members, I first came across Alderman Crowther at the age of 11. He was a maths teacher at the then St John's School in Swanstreet Avenue. Although I never was a member of a class that he taught, he was well respected by all his peers as a teacher. And then a few years later, quite a few years later, he was quite surprised at a count when a still fairly young, newly elected councillor Clark walked up on stage to be told that he'd actually won the seat for Roman Ward in that year. I can't remember exactly what he says to me, but I don't think it was very complimentary at the time. And then a few years later, in 2010, unfortunately, I lost my seat at that time, and it was Adrian that presented me. At that time, he was the mayor of Swale, and he presented me with my certificate. So those are my brief memories of Adrian. Yeah. Is there any other members that wish to remember Adrian at this point? Right. Thank you, members. I'd like to invite you to join me in standing for a minute's silence. Okay. Sorry, members. We move along now to agenda item number 6, the leader's statement. As always, I will ask the leader to read his statement. Then I will ask the leader of the opposition to respond. Following that, I'll invite other members to respond to the leader's statement. Members invited to speak will have 3 minutes. This item has an overall time limit of 30 minutes, and to ensure broad fairness, I will try to invite responses from members of the administration and the opposition groups in equal numbers. This may mean that I deviate from the order in which members have indicated a wish to speak. Can I please remind all members that responses must be a response to the issues raised in the leader's statement. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Council Hampshire. As we enter a new year, it is perhaps appropriate to look ahead a little and to ask a few questions about where we as a society may be going. Locally, officers continue to engage with a realm of consultations that emanate from the government or Kent County Council or indeed other bodies. And it is here that we can look towards the improvements that we seek and greater efficiency in how things are done. Sometimes, however, such forward-looking approaches can be clouded by those in charge of reform. The continuing uncertainty over central government's proposals to whole-scale reform the planning system are continuing the theme of a startling lack of details. A direct quote from the recent consultation says, "A fuller review of the framework will be required in due course," and its contents will depend on the implementation of the government's proposals for wider changes to the planning system, including the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. I'd like to compare this to the government giving local authorities a large, complicated jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the front of the box and without even telling us what the picture might be. The consultation goes on to talk about infrastructure, but admits that there is much more work to be done on the detail of the new levy, which was originally to be called the National Insurance Levy, National Infrastructure Levy, until someone realised the acronym spelt nil. It is so important to us going forward that this is resolved by this Parliament as soon as possible. Our own budget consultation is now finished, and we should have the results shortly, and these will have to be seen in the context of budget consultations going on across the country. We are still waiting for the Levelling Up announcement, which we hope is imminent, and we remain hopeful. Locally, the neighbourhood plan for Dunkirk and Bolton goes to referendum on the 16th of February. And I hope this gets a strong response from the local communities involved, as a lot of time and effort has gone into compiling this plan, and it needs public involvement going forward. In May of this year, as we all know, local elections are being held in Swale, and details for applying for voter ID went live on Monday. It remains a significant concern for residents of Swale, and I'm sure we will all here do all we can to publicise and encourage the process, irrespective of whether we consider it a gross obstacle to public electoral participation or even a hammer to crack an egg that may have indeed be empty of yolk. Listening to political commentators, you would think we are facing an existential crisis as we collectively panic about our place in the world. Yet most people I talk to are more concerned about developing and maintaining a happy life. This year, I expect we will hear much more from government about combined authorities and unitary councils, and the promise of financial reward, albeit very short term, if we make such moves. But this one-size-fits-all large authority approach is the antithesis of localism and accountability, and it removes the people away from the centre of power more than ever. The British people have demonstrated many times that they are not happy with remote governance. Devolution of power and the ability to pay for it is what should be the focus of discussions going forward, as local authorities are forced to find ways of managing with diminishing budgets. If we are to protect local democracy going forward, we must fight to make sure our voices are heard. You can be sure that this administration is making those arguments and is making sure that they are heard. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Horton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Leader, for sharing your statement with me in advance. It makes a response perhaps easier to create and certainly more relevant. You talk about the reform of planning and the difficulties that are associated with the reform of planning. I agree with you that it is taking far too long. We all need clarity, and the clarity that the people in this borough need more than any other is about top-down targets. I find it deeply disappointing that two of our major political parties insist that we have top-down targets, and in fact one of them, the Liberal Democrats, insists that the target is much bigger than it currently is. I think that that works against everything that we are trying to do here in Swale. There's a little bit of government bashing in this statement this evening, and I understand that. I am not proud of some of the things that our government have been up to as individuals, but I am proud to stand here as a member of a party which is in government, is doing something for the country, and unlike most of you, it's an opportunity you will not get. The current government has given this council the better part of £80 million above our budget over the last 4 years. That's effectively doubled the amount of money that we have to spend. And if we're going to bash the government on one hand, I think it's appropriate that we do recognise what they do with the other. I completely agree with you that the devolution that is currently being presented across the country is unsuitable. It is very, very difficult, however, to argue that being local with no money is better for our residents than being something which brings in a bucket load of cash. What is wrong is that the two should not be connected, and we should get, as people serving our local community, the resources that we need to enable us to do our job. I have stood before this council on at least 2 previous occasions, and I will again for the 3rd time criticise the carousel of ring-fenced pots of money, tiny little bits of money that we have to bid for, we have to argue for, we use officer time to argue, and we play against the big councils which have entire departments that are set up to do it. That cannot be the way that we deliver local services. And I think everyone in this room is probably at one on that topic. Finally, the leader has said, and I don't disagree with him, but he said that most people he talks to are more concerned about developing and maintaining a happy life. And unfortunately, at the moment, what I find is that most of the people I talk to are really worried about paying their bills. And that is not a good place for us to be in. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Horton. I now open up to members to speak, and I have councillor Truelove first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the leader will know that I've been following politics for 70 years now. And I don't remember a time, if I go back through the 50s and 60s and 70s, I don't remember a time where planning was such a politicised issue. When you look at the history of the 50s and 60s, the ministers that stood out were not actually talking about planning. And I just wonder, leader, whether unfortunately planning has become too politicised. And some of the confusion that you're talking about is the disconnect between what ministers might say, because it might be well received, and the work that's actually being done by their departments. And so people end up being confused because they think the government has changed direction. And there's been several times when this has happened, when we know they haven't actually changed direction. And talking about numbers being advisory and not mandatory, what does that actually mean in practice? Does it mean, as some people rather naively think, that somehow if we now submitted a plan that didn't get anywhere near the figures that we've been told as a top-down, that would be accepted by the planning inspectorate? It would not. And I think that is one of the problems, that there's too much politics around these numbers. And when you talk about top-down, and if you were referring to the Labour Party, the country does need 300,000 new homes. We have homelessness at a very serious level across the country. The problem with the figures is it's 2/3 of it has so far been allocated to London and South East. And that is not the way to level up. It's not the way to create a more equal society. And that is the problem. And we are having to take excessive numbers in the South East and in Swale of the wrong kind of housing, speculative housing in the interest of developers, sucking in people with larger incomes from outside the area. That is exactly what is wrong. I conclude by saying it's too politicised, and I've just made a political statement, but I accept the irony that goes with that. So anyway, I just asked the leader to speak on that, because I know he knows an awful lot about planning and I don't. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Truelove. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can't, as a leader of Lib Dems, not stand up when someone mentions the Lib Dems in their response. I will start off very much on this planning point, and I do concur with councillor Truelove. It has become too politicised. It seems that what we want to be distracted with, the dead cat of the week, is always planning, planning, planning. And we forget that actually what planning is about is providing homes for people. And we have reached a point whereby we provide the wrong homes for people. It's not necessarily the 300,000 homes that we need as a country. It's the fact that we need over 150,000 of those to be social rent homes. That's what's needed, and we're not doing it. And policy from central government has been wrong on that. And we need clarity on that. We need the funding there, and we need it to work for people so that we have the local needs met in the local areas where they are. I get tired of hearing the words that, well, if people can't afford to live in Swale anymore, why don't they move to Liverpool? That's what I've been hearing at times, because of people saying we get too much development. We have to be careful in how we speak on that. That being said, I concur with the leader. It is great to see the neighbourhood plan for Dunkirk and Bolton coming forward to referendum. I think that is the way forward for most parishes going forward, to make sure that the development that does come in their areas is the right sort of development for that parish. It is a good way forward. It engages the community early and encourages them to be positive about planning, not negative. Our politics is always far too negative as far as I'm concerned these days. We're always saying what we don't want, not what we do want. Let us be positive in this new year. Let us go forward working together to achieve positivity and do the right things for our communities. And I think that's what this administration has done the last 3.5 years, and I hope will continue to do after May's elections, even if we've got to go and get some people some more ID.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you very much. I think I can agree with quite a lot of what was said before. I think there's one strong thread that runs through this, and that's stability. And what we've seen from government is a complete lack of stability, not least having 3 prime ministers and at least one who wanted to blow up the economy and did a fairly good job. But we suffer. We suffer as householders and we suffer as businesses. And only in the last week, a major piece of infrastructure, Royal Mail, has been attacked and leaving in tatters many businesses, large and small. And yet there is quiet about this. Like many other things, there is, of course, the issue around housing targets. But actually, what is affecting the daily lives of many of our residents is the poor patchwork of health service that we receive in our borough, quite possibly because we're split in two. But actually, what we need is stability and a plan for how we get out of this hole. And would the leader agree with me that that plan hasn't been forthcoming?
Thank you, Councillor Bonney. I don't see anyone else indicating at the moment, so then I'll therefore like to invite Councillor Baldock to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bit surprised I was accused of bashing the government there. I've been trying to find which bit it might be referred to. I had a little dig at the continued uncertainty over the central government's proposals for whole-scale reform of planning, but everybody agreed with me. And frankly, top-down targets, I didn't think it was 2 parties in favour of them. I thought it was 3 parties. It's all we ever hear. And this is because all main parties end up favouring central control because they don't trust us out here in the shires. And it's getting that message across to the leaders of all political parties and all, especially civil servants. But actually, yeah, democracy is local. You should be trusting the shires. You should be trusting the borough councils. Because if they don't do a good job, it's the people that remove them, not civil servants, not governments. So I think all parties need to go back and look at what their plans for government are and say, come on, trust us. Out here, local councils, we're face to face, we're doing good work. Is planning too politicised? Well, as you demonstrated in your answer, no. Because planning affects every part of our lives. It affects communities. It affects the sense of place. And a sense of place is at the heart of most people's lives. Planning affects every aspect of society, health provision, as we heard from the Deputy Leader, education, transport. It affects people's futures. It affects people's ability to make ends meet. So politics isn't just, planning isn't just a bit of politics. It is at the heart of how we as a country develop, how we as a local society develop. And yes, as Councillor Martin said, absolutely, we need different sorts of housing. We need it in different places, as the leader of the Labour Party said. Motion. It is, so vital to the core of what we are as people. So is it too politicised? No. We must make sure that it is never swept under the carpet and that it is in future agreed between the government of the day and the main developers who, after all, have vested interests. Councillor Bonney asked, has the plan to get us out of this mess, the current mess we're in, be forthcoming? Frankly, I think we've been on a downward spiral to this mess for at least 20 years. There is no plan being driven by anybody else to get us out of it. It is down to us locally, as Councillor Martin said, to start working together and to start making the best we can for the people of Swale, because that's who we represent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, members. So we now move on to agenda item 7, questions submitted by the public. We don't have any questions submitted by the public for this evening's meeting. So we move on to agenda item 8, questions submitted by members. We have 2 questions from members. Each member's to ask their question in turn, and then I'll invite the chair of the relevant service committee to respond. So firstly, we have Councillor Hunt, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The leader has said on a number of occasions that land banking by housing developers is a problem we have in Swale. Deliberately banking land and delaying the delivery of sites slows the local housing market and impacts the council's 5-year housing supply, putting pressure on the need to look favourably at speculative applications coming forward. Would the leader please list the development sites in the borough where approval has been given, but where housing is not being built out due to the act of land banking? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. I'll now invite Councillor Baldock to respond.
I'd like to thank Councillor Hunt for his question. It again contains one of those claims made by certain opposition members without any reference to the provenance of those claims, without any evidence and without any context. Having said that, I fully agree with the points that he makes in his second paragraph and understand that his own government also recognises the problem, and we all hope they are willing to take appropriate action in the forthcoming Levelling Up Bill. A debate in Parliament in June 2021 was reported in Hansard saying in 2019 almost 400,000 homes were given planning permission in England, but only 240,000 were actually built. Over a 10-year period from 2009, 2.5 million homes were given planning permission. Only 1.5 million homes were actually built. That translates to a backlog of roughly 1 million unbuilt homes. From observation across this borough, it is obvious that there are numerous sites where planning permission has been given, but the developer has yet to commence development. I am assuming that this is what Councillor Hunt is referring to. There may be any number of reasons why this is so, and undoubtedly some developers are delaying commencement for commercial reasons relating to house prices, market saturation, etc. Such are the movers of capitalism. In other situations, developers may have gained outline consent, but have yet to apply for reserved matters, or may in the process of discharging conditions before they commence development. There is currently no way to compel developers to build out or complete developments, as the current government regime allows developers to nominally commence development to keep the permission alive. Councillor Hunt may be aware that planning permissions are monitored as part of the process for preparing the housing land supply position statement. Assessments are made to determine if a site is not started or under construction. It is a numbers exercise to determine housing delivery numbers, so this data can be fed into the calculation. Details of why sites are delivering at their rates is not relevant to the calculation, so not collected. If Councillor Hunt would care to clarify the scope of the answer he is seeking, i.e. if he is asking about sites that have gained planning permission but not yet started, or those where development has minimally commenced, or those sites with outline permission only, I can ask the planners to look into matters and report back, if he feels that such a resource-intensive use of officer time is the best use of that time.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hunt?
Yes, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you. And to clarify a couple of points there, on one occasion that you did say the leader said about land banking was at the Western Area Committee. But this isn't a question to cause any issue or upset. It is a genuine question to know which land in the borough developers are banking. And I did say in the original question, can we name and shame? But I got told off for saying that. But if the councillor, the leader would go back to officers, if there are some genuine places that we know of in the borough that aren't coming forward, that have got planning approval and could be being built out and that we know that are not coming forward, I think it is good that the public know that where those sites are. So would the leader please ask officers to bring a list forward of which sites they do believe are being held back deliberately?
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Hunt. I mean, land banking is not a legally defined term. And should I imagine this is what you were advised, stand here and give a list of those which I feel would meet a definition, maybe not a definition that would be shared by them, it could put this council at some risk of action to being taken. And I'm sure that none of us here would want that. Would I go back to officers and ask that they put pressure on reticent developers? Absolutely, absolutely I will. These are the people who make it difficult for us to meet the basic targets that we don't agree with, which are set. And I'm happy to give you that assurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. We now move on to question number 2. Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question goes to the Chair of the Environment Committee. At the extraordinary council meeting on the 4th of January, the council agreed to fund the vehicle fleet for the new waste contract, which it will then own. Can you confirm how arrangements for repairing and servicing will work and the arrangements the council will put in place to ensure these assets are maintained during the period of the contract? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Councillor Saunders, please.
Okay, thank you for your question, Councillor Davey. The council have provided the funding for the purchase of the vehicles, but will benefit from the contractor's purchasing power with manufacturers, along with saving money on lower costs of borrowing. The council will own the vehicle fleet, and the contract documents provide clear responsibilities in order to protect the council's asset. The winning contractor, Suez, is responsible for managing the vehicles in entirety, tasking all control and risk. So that covers licensing, tax, insurance, and the relevant repairs and maintenance. They provided a clear method statement in their tender and will utilise the expertise of a local workshop contractor specialising in heavy goods vehicles. The councils will receive regular update reports on vehicle servicing and maintenance, vehicle downtime, and have contract staff regularly based at the depot site to spot any issues. We will also undertake reviews through an external specialist should it be deemed necessary. The councils have also have additional coverage through the contract. Failure to maintain the vehicles properly will require the contractor to pay for replacements should they be needed. So this gives an incentive for proactive management of vehicles. Furthermore, the contract performance mechanism, the way in which we hold the contractor to account for service failure, will be used should vehicle breakdowns result in poor service. This includes strengthened financial penalties compared to the current contract.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Davey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the response to my question there. That was the answer I was expecting, having sat on a number of briefings and the Environment Committee during the negotiations for the new contract and the announcement this week. So based on that answer, do you think that it's irresponsible for posts to be put on social media that are the polar opposite of the actual facts that we are aware of and should know. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Saunders.
Okay, thank you for your follow-up question, Councillor Davey. I certainly don't think it's helpful to the public if they're being given inaccurate information. And I think I would want the public to be aware of the positive reasons that the council's decided to go down this route. In my initial answer, I did say that there were two benefits that would financial benefits that would result, that we would be getting a lower rate of borrowing as a council, but we would be combining that with the contractor's purchasing power, and I think that will yield a saving to the public. The second thing I would say in terms of this arrangement is that it will give the council more control. So in terms of managing the contract, if down the line there was a need to purchase new vehicles, or there was a need to change management or contracting arrangements, the greater control that the council would have would be a real benefit to it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Saunders. That concludes agenda item 8. So we now move on to agenda item 9. The next item on the agenda is the Council Tax Support Scheme 2023-24. Been quite busy tonight, Councillor Baldock. So,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't talk long on this one. It's a practical, sensible approach to collection of council tax. It's gone out to consultation. There's been overwhelming support for the changes that we propose. And I hope that we can agree this, and I hope it isn't too controversial. So I'm happy to move it, Mr. Mayor.
right, thank you, Councillor Baldock. I'd now like to invite Councillor Horton to second and ask whether he wishes to speak now or reserve his right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am delighted to second, and I will speak now if I may. I stood up on the very first day as leader of the opposition and said that the Conservatives on this council will support the administration when we think you are doing right. This is one of those occasions. What he said. Thank you.
I didn't even get the chance to set the timer on that one, Councillor Horton. Right, I now open up the debate to the floor. I've got Councillor Truelove first, please.
Yes, quite clearly, this is a very good solution to a rather difficult problem, and I'm sure we're all going to support it. I just think we ought, however, to note in passing that this is another large lump of dog's breakfast handed down from government, where devolution seems to be based not on giving local government, as the leader appealed for earlier, more say, more decision making, more powers, but just giving local government the tasks that really belong with the government, but they don't want to do it, and it becomes more comfortable to pass it down to local authorities. I think we can be absolutely clear that if we go into arrangements with the government that involve finance and administration, over a short period of time, the finance diminishes and the level of administration increases to the extent that it has to be made as absolutely as difficult as possible, not just for us as administrators, but for the public who have to fight their way through this. And so we've got this impact of the universal credit, which makes it necessary now for us to have this graded system of benefits to people. And our staff will have worked on this with incredible expertise. and no one will thank them for it.
Thank you, councillor Truelove. Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to disappoint Councillor Truelove by saying that, first of all, I think we want to thank Zoe, Kent and the team on this one for a job well done. I do recall that we started discussing these changes back when we were still under the cabinet system, whether it was something that could be done, and we needed a little more, the officers needed a little more time to get something together that would make the grade. It has been well thought through. It brings us into line with other councils within the Mid-Kent partnership, which may allow for further efficiency savings in the longer term, whilst ensuring that we as a council are the ones that benefit financially from the savings first and foremost. So there is some additional backing there for what may be possible in the future. I think this is the right thing to do. It is, of course, disappointing that changes from central government mean a burden of more administration on local government. That's just what we've got used to, I guess, unfortunately. But this is the right thing to do going forward, and the consultation supports that, so it will have my full support too.
Thank you, councillor Martin. Are there any other members that wish to speak on this? Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too would like to thank Zoe Kent and her team. It's a very clear proposal and it appears to work much better. But I do think the two most attractive things in it are, firstly, that it is a simpler scheme, simpler for our own administration, which saves money, but also simpler for individuals. And for anyone on universal credit, it becomes an automatic scheme. So you're not dependent on people understanding it sufficiently to apply for it, because it will come automatically. And I just don't think central government have recognised the fact that typically for about half of universal credit recipients, the level of universal credit changes every month. And the simplicity and clarity of this scheme will be a real benefit to people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. I see. See no further hands. So at this stage, I'd like to ask Councillor Baldock to sum up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everything seems very political tonight, doesn't it? I wonder what's going on this year to bring that about. No, I had down for my summing up. But I would like to thank the staff, all the staff for getting involved in this, and that they are in fact rewarded by it being a more straightforward process. Thank you all for taking the words out of my mouth, and I hope now that we can put the politics aside and just vote this through. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Baldock. I'll now ask members to vote on the recommendation, and in accordance with the local authorities standing orders England regulations 2010 as amended, there will be a recorded vote. So I'll call out your names one by one. If you can indicate for, against or abstention, please. Councillor Baldock.
For.
Councillor Bonney.
For.
Councillor Carnell.
For.
Myself for. Councillor Davey.
For.
Councillor Dendor.
For.
Councillor Eakin.
For.
Councillor Gibson.
For.
Councillor Gould.
For.
Councillor Hunt. Councillor Anne Hampshire.
For.
Councillor Nicholas Hampshire.
For.
Councillor Harrison. Councillor Henderson, Councillor Horton,
4.
Councillor Hunt, sorry. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hall, my apologies. 4 or against. Beg your pardon, I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought it was a cross through your name. Trying to get it finished by 8 o'clock. Councillor Ingleton.
4.
Councillor Jackson.
4.
Councillor Jays. Councillor Knights. Councillor Marchington. Councillor Martin. Councillor Neal. Councillor Nsanga. Councillor Rolls.
4.
Councillor Saunders.
4.
Councillor Simmons. Councillor Paul Stephen. Councillor Sarah Stephen. Councillor Truelove.
4.
Councillor Valentine. 4. Councillor Whelan. Councillor Whiting. 4. Councillor Winkliss.
4.
And Councillor Woodford. That is unanimously carried, members. Thank you. Right, so we now move on to agenda item number 10. The next item on the agenda is the annual climate and ecological emergency progress report. I'd like to invite Councillor Saunders to introduce the report and propose the recommendations.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, I was going to propose that Councillor Valentine introduce the report as the chair of the working group, and I'm happy to second the recommendations. Is that okay? All right with you?
Yes, if that is your wish, Councillor Saunders. Councillor Valentine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the 4th annual report on the action plan, which we adopted in April 2020. The plan has been rated by the NGO Climate Emergency UK amongst the top 20 plans for councils in the country. It's also received an A rating for by the Carbon Disclosure Project and is one of only 122 municipal areas in the world to receive this ranking, and the only council in Kent. So the coalition has moved Swale from being a laggard on climate action in Kent to a position of national and international leadership. The action plan can be thought of as being in 3 parts. The impact of the direct operations of the council, the impact of the services that we commission, known as Scope 3, and then the wider impact on the borough of Swale, over which we have very much less influence. Progress has been made in all 3 of these areas. Within the direct impact of the council's operations, some of the highlights are the eco refit of Masters House, and of course the refit of this building with the new double glazing and insulation of the Undercroft. I have to say, sitting here at the back of the council chamber, I notice how little I can hear the traffic tonight. I hope that bodes well for some carbon savings. The electrification of the fleet has continued and delivers carbon savings and cost savings in running the council vehicles. In terms of services, the Green Spaces contract has now made use of electric power tools and vehicles, reduced use of pesticides and planting schemes that will enhance nature. Over 11,000 trees will have been planted in Swale by the end of this planting season. The new waste contract will deliver further carbon savings with more efficient routes and vehicles. Turning to the wider borough, I think the work of the Fuel and Water Advisory Service has been over key importance at this time, where many of our more vulnerable citizens are facing the impact of the cost of living crisis. 10 twin chargers have been installed in 3 car parks across the borough, and they're just about to be commissioned. The car club was established in Faversham in January. That has exceeded expectations and is regularly returning higher than predicted use. And just recently, the Environment Committee has authorised the establishment of a Sittingbourne car club. The Climate Action Plan has also leveraged in considerable government funding, over £100,000 for EV car chargers and over £170,000 for tree planting. I just want to conclude by talking about the co-benefits of climate action. Not only do these actions improve our impact on the climate, reduce carbon emissions, but for example, planting trees in green spaces enhances those spaces which are so important to our physical and mental health. Insulating public buildings provides a new lease of life for older buildings and will reduce the cost to the taxpayer of heating those buildings. Encouraging the adaptation of EVs contributes to the council's plan to improve air quality. So I can commend the report to you. And this report lists just some of the things that the administration is doing in order to provide a cleaner, greener and healthier environment for the residents as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Valentine. I'd now like to call Councillor Saunders and ask you if you wish to second the motion and ask you if to speak now or reserve your right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to second the recommendation and I would like to speak now. I hope all members will support the recommendation and take on board the good progress that's been made over the last 12 months. I particularly want to pay tribute to Councillor Valentine, the chair of the Climate Emergency Working Group, and the 2 officers, Grace Couch and Janet Hill, working on the project directly for the progress they've made over the last 4 years. In fact, there's been a considerable amount of activity, 72 project strands started, a goodly amount of achievement, as Councillor Valentine has just been telling us. And latterly, as Councillor Valentine has also told us, some very positive external recognition of the strong progress being made. As chair of the Environment Committee, I've been impressed by the way action has been taken across the council, with officers from a wide range of departments being actively involved. How effectively the one-off budget available from the Improvement and Resilience Fund has been used to help initial development, and how successful we've been in drawing in external funding to help meet our objectives. Initially, I was concerned that we might be overambitious when we agreed the plan, but I now feel our ambition and desire to get on with it has been justified, with such good progress made and the council clearly showing leadership across the borough, acting as an exemplar for other councils and organisations, and supporting businesses, community organisations and the public through advice, grants and events. There's also been plenty of learning along the way. As Councillor Valentine said, it's become clear how activities against one priority can often have benefits across other council priorities, that we can't do it all on our own and that we are sometimes dependent on the active support of other arms of local government, like Kent County Council, on technological advance in the private sector and central government funding to make real progress. Members, it's clear that on a national and global scale, we need to step up the pace to get to net zero. And I hope this council will continue to push as hard as it has done in the last 3.5 years for the changes we need both internally and externally to achieve our ambitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saunders. I'd now like to invite Councillor Horton to speak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to speak. I am surprised that just because I'm the leader of the opposition, I get to go first, but I'm very grateful. Thank you. What I've got written down here is make sure you thank Janet Hill and Grace Crouch for the excellent work that they have done coordinating this work, and can we all show that appreciation the way we would normally do? Because just a couple of small observations. The leader of, or the chair of the Environment Committee has urged us to take fully the recommendations, and I am delighted to note this report. And I say that a little tongue in cheek because actually my recollection is that when Councillor Hampshire made an amendment to the original climate emergency, he asked that a report be brought forward each year. And the purpose of that report in part was firstly to advise us what has gone on, and this has done that. And secondly, it was supposed to be timed so that we could make decisions as a council about the budget and about how we were going to further this agenda. Because whilst it's possibly inconvenient sometimes, the Conservatives voted unanimously to support the bill, the motion when it was put forward, and we have done so. So we want to engage properly in the conversation. If this is the priority, and we think it is, then the whole purpose of the paper was for us to make decisions about where the spending would be in the year coming up. I actually think we got the timing wrong. And what I would urge the administration to think about, and those who are running this next year, is if we had this report perhaps in the autumn, we could then make informed decisions about what we were going to do with the budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkson. I'll have Councillor Truelove, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, this is the last report of this particular council. So it is kind of, in a way, it's summative. It tells us where we've achieved in 4 years, and it's important in that respect. And I think reading through it, the amount of detail, the amount of things that have been achieved, is something that the whole of this council should be proud of, because deciding to have a climate emergency strategy is one thing. Delivering on it in so many respects is something to be applauded. And the accolades that we've received, which have been referred to by other members, they should never be minimised. They are outstanding. You know, to be amongst the best 123 in the world, I don't recall Swale achieving that in other things in the past. So congratulations to the council for that, and the way that the whole council's pulled together, because across all our departments, I think all our officers have responded to this agenda, and it has an influence on the work of the whole council. Councillor Horton mentioned the budget. I think if you look carefully at this, you'll see that it's had minimal impact in delivering all this on the revenue budget. The funding, as the report suggests, a lot of it came from the Improvement and Resilience Fund, which is not base budget, it's not revenue budget. It's money that was business rate growth money that we as an administration were somewhat fortunate to inherit, that has been put into this, as many other successful developments across the council. So it's at the moment that there are budgetary implications to it, but it is very good that we've made use of those reserve funds that could not be used for the base budget anyway, and how successful we have been in attracting outside funding. And we've been successful because we're in the vanguard, because we're in the forefront. Therefore, the money has come to us with the help that we're getting with the Master's House and with the massive number of trees. And I can't establish exactly how many trees have been planted, because Grace Couch told me it was 23,000. So, you know, that is phenomenal. So let's all congratulate the working group who've worked consistently and quietly on this. It has meant that one or two officers have made career moves into areas that they perhaps were not so familiar with in the past. But I would like to second really the points made about Janet Hill's work and Grace Couch, who is now moving on to Walton Forest. And I think it's a matter of pride to us that we've brought in this initiative. We brought it in a young person as a specialist, and she has done so well on this council because of the encouragement and because of her innate talent that other people snap her up as somebody who can make a big difference to their council. So I think that is very important too. But like, no, I must say the last thing. I know you're the mayor, but let me finish. Because this has to be said. I won't come out canvassing for you if you don't let me do this. No, then I don't think we can pass without echoing what Councillor Saunders said. I don't think, the Labour group doesn't think, that this would have made anything like the progress it has done, but for Tim Hamilton. Valentine.
Hamilton, really.
All right, Tim. Thank you. Do you want me to sit down now?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Well, was there a little bit of bribery in there somewhere? Do I have to declare that? Right. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will certainly, I'm very much impressed with a lot of this report, and I will certainly support the recommendations. But I do want to introduce a but into it. We have done extremely good work related to climate change. There's no question about that. However, we declared a climate change and ecological emergency. And I have to say, I do not think we have done anything like enough in relation to improving the environment and improving biodiversity. Councillor Valentine knows my views on this, but if you look right the way through the report, there is frankly very little on biodiversity. Yes, we have planted some trees, and it's perhaps interesting in looking at it in this direction that both Councillor Valentine and Councillor Saunders each only gave one example of biodiversity impact, biodiversity improvement, and it is critical. Climate change may kill the earth, but so will damaging biodiversity. They are equally important, and there is a huge amount which needs to be done on biodiversity. Lots of it relates to insects and other pollinators, and there is an enormous amount that we could do to improve insect populations and the population of other pollinators, which indeed would then improve agriculture and horticulture because they are dependent on that. And I would implore the council and the hopefully ongoing working party on this to consider biodiversity more strongly and to seek to measure biodiversity, because the few bits in the report which relate to biodiversity talk about its impact on climate change, but they don't talk about its impact on biodiversity. So we have no targets there, and we really should have. So I hope we will take note of that and act on it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, councillor Henderson. Councillor Whiting, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Just add my voice to those who thank the officers and the members who've brought this forward in the way that it has been brought forward, and progress has been made and is being made, and that is very clear to see from the detail that sits within the report. So I'd like to thank not just the officers but the members that have been, deeply involved in making this happen. I think that's only fair to say. I've got a couple of questions though that concern me slightly. We've only got 18 months or so to go before we get the 2025 deadline. And there's very little in here, even when you look at the revised plans for 2023, that show us how we're going to hit that 2025 deadline for zero emissions within the council's sphere of the council's business, which is the first target. And I'm not quite sure from reading this report that there is a clear roadmap of how we're going to get there, and it's not very long away. We've got one more of these reports to come, and then we're kind of there. So I'd like to have understood that more, and perhaps I've misread it, but I don't believe I have. The second thing, all through the action points, we see reference to things that are reliant on the emerging local plan, and then we're told that these are all on track. But we know last November the local plan review was put on hold. So I just don't quite understand how we can be on track with, and there are dozens of them in here. I won't go through them all. There are dozens of them that refer to being on track, but yet reliant on the review of the local plan coming forward. So I'd like to understand more fully, it's a question really, how that apparent conflict is going to be resolved moving forward, given the very restricted amount of time we've got before this. I suppose, as just a final point, is the 2025 deadline January 2025 or December 2025? Because that's not quite clear, because we could buy ourselves an extra year by making it December. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Whiting. Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you very much. I think this shows a great piece of collaborative working. As a coalition, I think when we came in, there were many that were sceptical at how so many groups could come together with a list of priorities. And I think what we've shown is that you can create a plan and a goal, and you can collectively work on it. And you can bring on board a strategy, and with the help of and the professionalism of the officers, is to establish that and embed that within the council. And that gets ingrained into every aspect of every bit of the council, from paper cups to how we landscape our parks, how we don't use pesticides in the quantity that we have done previously. And I think it shows you can have a transformation in quality of product and quality of service. And I think the windows are a good point. It's nice and quiet, but hopefully we will save some energy. So that's that cross silo working, which I think many of us previously felt this council was run in silos and never do they talk to each other. But what this shows is that they do, and they can deliver. So I'd like to thank the officers. I was on the working party, and some of the issues that have been raised around biodiversity have been discussed at length. But we are somewhat dependent on partner organisations to come with us in that journey and the speed at which they work. And that goes again with central government. We've heard the mess of planning. We can only work at the speed at which our higher power allows us to. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Bonney. Councillor Hunt, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to pick up on the trees. I think it is really good that we have planted that amount of trees. But I do just want to raise concern about how the trees last that we do plant in the borough. Recently, 3-4 years ago, we planted some on the Meads at Moonstone Square, and within the next year they died. And that's probably 10 trees that we need that I've been asking for to be replanted, and they've now been, the dead trees removed, but we planted 23,000 and we only need 10 in the mead. If that can just be sorted out and planted, it would be really good. But also, it's seriously that we do need to make sure that these trees are maintained. It's no good just planting them and having to then replant again the following year. We really do need to make sure they're properly watered and they're established as they move forward. If we do have another 23,000 plants to trees to plant by 2025 and we're using reserves, I think we're going to be starting to run out of the reserves for it.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Harrison, please.
So just out of my notes. Some people will know what I'm talking about. First of all, I'd like to say thank you, Tim, for leading us on this. You have done a fantastic job. Write that down because you won't get it again. Three things that I want to mention, Mr. Mayor. One was recycling. There is still some work to do on that in this council. And it's not necessarily this council, but this council working with government and industry, because when we get our community, our residents to the point where, no, I'm recycling. Yeah, well, it said on that, let's think of something, cartridges, water cartridges, but it said on that water cartridge, it can be recycled. So I put it in my clear sack. It probably can, but not with Swarborough Council. And there's an awful lot of stuff that people, our residents are actually reading now and saying, no, it says it can be recycled. Yeah, but not with us. So there is a message that we need to get out there. And of course, working with industry, check with your local council, because not all of them will take these plastic bread bags or whatever it is. And the other 2 points related to the EV charging. I think that we do have an education issue that we should be making clear. A lot of people think, well, why can't you just put an EV charging thing there or there or there? In our car parks, and I know I read the wrong things like the Telegraph and the Mail and all the rest of it, that's where I get this information from. Car parks up and down the country are bowing under the weight because electric vehicles are twice the weight of a normal one, something to the battery. So you need to make sure that your car parks, and if it's on street, that bit of KCC street is strong enough to take it. And then the other point is there enough energy in the area? We have, Swarborough Council have actually had to put in substations in some places. Now, I'm pretty sure a substation ain't 2.5 pence. We're talking a bit here. So it's not just a case of, well, why can't you put one over there? There is a lot that goes into it, and it's a lot more than that little box thing that you plug in. So I do think that there's an education issue there, Mr. Mayor, that we need to get out so that people don't whinge and whine and think they're being picked on or victimised because they ain't got one in their area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Martin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we start by going, yes, this is a really excellent report, and I'm sure all of us will agree to note the report. It contains an awful lot. And as we've heard from everybody around, there are elements that we haven't quite delivered yet. There's more to do. But that's the thing, it is a work in progress. We can't, as a council that doesn't own car parks in every town and village in the borough, put off-street EV chargers in everywhere, because we rely on another authority to allow us permission to put on-street chargers in, one that is not so keen to do so. We do have to work with our partners to deliver on biodiversity, and there is work to be done there. Trees are great, wildflower meadows are also great, as are salt marshes and restoring those. So there is lesson to be done there. But I said earlier that we want to be more positive, and actually we can be positive. The administration has worked well here. the opposition has worked well to challenge as well. So credit where credit's due. Councillor Valentine has led well, as has Councillor Saunders. And from my own group, 2 members that aren't here tonight have taken their place working alongside them over the last 3.5 years. There are lessons to be learned. There's more to be done, but let's go out on a positive and bear in mind that we're in the same category as Swale, as Paris, Kyoto, Calgary, Madrid, Barcelona and San Francisco in world leaders. We can be proud of that. We should be proud of that. And the people of this borough should be proud of that. And the officers, my God, they definitely should be proud of that.
Yeah. Well said, Councillor Martin. Thank you. Councillor Nicholas Hampshire, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A lot has been said about the really good progress that this report actually highlights, and I 100% concur with that. But to put a slight dampener on, it's not all a coalition success story. It's actually a council success story, because actually the foundations from where we got to were delivered by myself and Councillor Simmons with the Air Quality Action Plan. And actually behind the scenes, it is a cross-party working group with members of the coalition and members of this opposition working together to deliver this. So let's not forget about that. And I think that message has partly been lost. Everyone on this council is committed to delivering a cleaner and a greener environment for us all. And sometimes it's very easy to make really big strides when you're embarking on a project. I think the real challenge is going to be in the next 5-10 years, because actually to get the benefits, it's going to require so much more work. But I think we've got a really good foundation in the council that we have here. The leader has said tonight about working together. This is an example where we can all work together.
Thank you, Councillor Hampshire. Councillor Gibson, please.
I'll try again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll confess that I was absolutely terrified and wondered about the sanity of Councillor Valentine, because of course some of the challenges that he was kind of indicating that we'd be setting ourselves, I thought we just got absolutely no chance. Well, as my wife tells me so many times indoors, I was wrong. I was massively wrong. As many people have already said tonight, I think he's done a fantastic job in getting these wheels in motion. And whilst I appreciate the comments of Councillor Hampshire, the significant input has been driven by Councillor Valentine without a shadow of a doubt. And of course, I would join in commending the work of both Grace and Janet, and to say that we've got national and international recognition is sufficient. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I've got time just to take a final speaker. Councillor Dendor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a very quick one, I'll be brief. I just wanted to pick up, thank you for the report. I think it's a fantastic report, like everybody else, and also thank you to the officers. I won't repeat everything said. I think we're all of the same mind there. But I just wanted to pick up Councillor Henderson's point. I did actually spot one sentence, Councillor Henderson, on page 43. A local farmer is working with Marks and Spencer on a trial of wildflower strips in orchards to encourage pollinators. One sentence in the whole report. And although progress has been incredible, I do agree with Councillor Henderson that not enough has been done on the ecology side. And I simply want to make the point, or ask the question really, I can't see it in here anywhere. Is the working party aware of Plan B, KCC's Plan B? And if not, I would invite them to contact the officers at KCC and the relevant members to join Plan B and to get involved with this. Thank you. Thank
you, Councillor Dendor. Finally, then, I'd just like to invite Councillor Valentine if you wish to sum up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so let me go through and pick out some of the points. Councillor Hampshire has already made the point that the opposition are represented on the steering group. So in reply to Councillor Horton's point, we very much value that contribution. And I think it's, as Councillor Hampshire said, it's a joint effort in working together. The timing of the report being January, I'm pretty sure that is written into the declaration. And I think we just took the words that Councillor Hampshire proposed. So I think the timing of the budget is of the report is your choice rather than ours. But I'm happy to look at it. Councillor Truelove, if Grace says there are 23,000 trees planted in the borough, then I'm sure she's right. The figure of 11,000 I was talking about is the number under the local authority tree fund that we're planting at the moment. And I totally take the point that Councillor Hunt made about trees dying. I'm sure we can replace the trees that have died. You will remember we had a heat wave this summer. We had the highest recorded temperatures ever. It isn't the best time to have young trees. And it's, of course, it's the early years that are critical. The local authority tree fund does include maintenance of the trees for a period of time, 2 or 3 years, I think. So it's covered on those trees. But equally, I think it's great to plant young trees, but what's even more important is to stop cutting down old trees. And they're the resource that really have the impact for biodiversity. And unfortunately, I've discovered trees have very little protection under our planning system, and it's very difficult to stop a landowner cutting down a tree, or it's what's just happened in my ward, 400 metres of poplars that have been cut down. Usually the first thing you know about it is when they're gone. On biodiversity, so it's our 4th report, and I'm sure it's the 4th time Councillor Henderson has said this. And so I'll give my 4th reply, but there is more than has been picked up in the report. So, for example, we were chosen because of our leadership as the only borough council in Kent to participate in Kent Wildlife Trust's project on wilder carbon. And one resource that we have that's very helpful to us is seagrass, and improving seagrass is better for carbon sequestration than rainforests. So I'm hoping there's something that we'll be able to do on that. But the nature of these projects, multi-agency, the funding, they're not easy projects to get off the ground, and they do take time. We don't have control over what farmers do on their land, but the government does. And with the ELMS scheme, I would have great hope that we can improve the biodiversity of agricultural land. But that's another area of government that is much delayed, and speculation that it's not going to happen at all. So that's a point where we rely on central government to try and help us with that area. Having said that, we also run the Green Grid. And there are farmers and community groups who participate in the Green Grid, who share our resources, our ambitions, we welcome any groups or individuals or parish councils who want to come along to the Green Grid and help the ways in which we do that. Perhaps we haven't given the Green Grid as much exposure in the report that perhaps we could have done. I think that probably on street charging, there was something, we had a working group meeting just a couple of days ago, and one thing that was said for the first time that's never happened before, Grace reported that KCC had rung her up to ask for a meeting to talk about on-street parking, and that is absolutely a first. We've been trying to get them to the table on that topic for a long time. So there is this new Levi funding, which is specifically for on-street charges, and so I hope that will provide the impetus that will get us over that grid. I can see your microphone's gone on, Mr. Mayor. Can I just conclude by
30 seconds.
Adding my thanks to Grace and Janet and Martin Cassell for their sterling work on this project over the years. We're very grateful to Grace for the work she's done with us. You'll remember that she won an award as a rising star. And it's perhaps not surprising that she's been tempted away from us to go on to greater things. Waltham Forest is one of the leading London boroughs on our climate action, so I can see the appeal of the move that she's making. But we're very grateful for their work, and I think I agree. The challenge will be the next 5 or 10 years, keeping the momentum going, and of course, in the early years, we take the low-hanging fruit. It's as the lower we get down on those emissions, the harder it is to keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Valentine. Right, I'd now like to ask members to agree and note the report. All agreed? Thank you, members. I now move on to agenda item 11. The next item is to note minute 526 from the Policy and Resources Committee, 14th of December, which was the subject of agenda item 9 on this agenda, and the minute number 551 from the Extraordinary Policy and Resources Committee on the 4th of January, which were accepted by full council at its extraordinary meeting on the 4th of January. Do members agree and note? Lovely. Thank you, members. And just before I close the meeting, as we weren't in the chamber before Christmas, I wasn't able to lay on any refreshments for members and officers. I have laid on a buffet and refreshments in the Mayor's Parlour, and I'd like to invite all members and officers to come back for some refreshments. And I close the meeting at 20:28.